After playing the first 4 hours of Cyberpunk 2077, it's tough to know where to begin. No, literally. You're offered 3 origin story choices for your V, no matter what gender and appearance you choose, and how you allocate your initial allotment of skill points. I chose the corporate backstory in order to put myself right in the thick of Night City from the jump, and what I quickly learned is that no matter where you start, there are so many layers to Cyberpunk 2077 that a 4-hour hands-on session isn't even enough time to scratch the surface of any of it, in a good way. But I nevertheless learned a lot about what makes Cyberpunk special, as well as what it still needs to work on between now and its new November 19th release date. After agreeing to take out my boss's corporate rival, Abernathy, my next stop is to meet up with my good pal and crew member, Jackie Wells. It's during Cyberpunk's early moments, including the AV ride that conveniently takes you on an aerial tour of part of Night City, that makes clear the #1 most impressive thing about Cyberpunk 2077 in its first 4 hours. The absolutely incredible job CD Projekt Red seems to have done on world building. As you'll quickly come to see, Night City feels both alive and lived in, and its unique districts are just that, genuinely unique. There are people everywhere, from shopkeepers to sex workers to gang members to even, surprisingly, children. And interactions with just about every person of interest have many dialogue tree choices. The visual identity of Night City is also strong, with neon colors and hazy lighting giving the world an appropriately gritty feel. Advertisements for in-universe products are everywhere, cars have upwards of a dozen radio stations to choose from, the urban favela near my apartment is teeming with shops and food stands, etc.
NCPD, drop your weapons!
The quests do a great job of adding to this as well, with bigger jobs featuring multiple layers of setup, pregame, and intrigue, and you'll have the chance to change allegiances numerous times during these major quests as well. Anyway, after illegally parking on a basketball court, which upset the guys playing, until I spiked one of them in the head with the ball and punched a second one, leaving the third to cower in fear, I walked into Lizzie's bar to talk to my pal Jackie. He encouraged me to abandon the corporate life, but of course, it can't be that easy.
Now sit down and tell me what's got your shorts in a knot.
A driving sequence a short time later again showed off Cyberpunk's wide acting range, so to speak. 1 minute, Jackie is driving and more heavies sent by Abernathy are on our trail, so I lean out the passenger window and shoot the guys out of the back of one van and the driver of another. The next minute, as we approach the entrance to my neighborhood, Jackie, with a dialogue tree assist from yours truly, sweet-talks the female officer and convinces her to let us through a roadblock after the area has been locked down. Later, I encounter near opposite gameplay from the chase sequence when Judy Alvarez puts me into a brain dance, a sort of interactive video built from one's memories, in an effort to gather intel in support of the overarching main quest. Think of the Braindance editor as a cyberpunk version of Detroit Become Human's investigation scenes, where you'll scrub the timeline back and forth and examine the scene from multiple angles using audio, visual, and thermal cues. Both of the Braindances I played dragged on a bit too long, but hopefully they're tutorial-leaning exceptions. There's so much to cover during the first 4 hours of playtime that I'm leaving out a lot of stuff I also did to further invest in my character and immerse myself in Night City. From visiting the Ripper Dock to get my first cybernetic upgrades, to joining an underground fight club, to completing the same rescue the cybernetically overloaded naked woman from the bathtub full of ice mission we'd previously seen at E3, and more. Again, there is a lot going on here. It is highly unlikely that you'll burn through everything Cyberpunk 2077 has to offer in a single weekend. Well, did you just hear a lot of spoilers about Cyberpunk's early game? Technically, yes, but in practice, not really, as there are so many different choices to be made about your backstory, your playstyle, your quest choices, and more, that odds are good you'd never have my exact same experience anyway. It's also important to mention that my 4 hours with Cyberpunk 2077 weren't perfect. I barely got a chance to use any of the hacking and stealth skills I invested so many of my first upgrade points into, though that's admittedly more of a time limit problem than a game problem. And for what it's worth, I didn't even see Keanu Reeves' Johnny Silverhand the entire time I played, so it remains to be seen how large a role he plays. Mechanically, the inventory management was a bit clunky in the build I played, with some gear and upgrade screens best described as annoyingly unintuitive. So too were some of the tutorials, and the driving controls didn't feel particularly good either. But most, if not all, of these issues are exactly the kind of things CD Projekt Red can spend the next 4+ months ironing out. Cyberpunk 2077 feels like the spiritual successor to War Inspector's legendary original Hall of Fame inducted Deus Ex. I personally cannot pay it a higher compliment than that. It just might somehow live up to the last half-decade's worth of hype. For more on Cyberpunk 2077, check out 15 minutes of gameplay from the Pacifica district of Night City from last year, as well as a look at the character creator. And for everything else, keep it right here